The content in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing we say should be taken as individualized advice. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional.
We would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners of the unceded lands of the Kulin Nation on which this podcast is recorded. We acknowledge their rich history and honour the ongoing connection to land, waters, culture and community. Welcome to This Might Help, a podcast bridging the gap between psychology research and your everyday life. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti.
And I'm Dr. Kira Hart, and today we are answering all your psychology questions.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for everyone who wrote in a question on TikTok or Instagram.
Yeah.
And today we'll be unpacking our experience of becoming psychologists and going through university and answering questions you had on the topic.
Yeah.
But before we get into the questions for today, let's begin our episodes as we always do with our wellbeing wins and our wellbeing wobbles of the past week. Lauren, kick us off.
My wellbeing win this week is it's just literally disappeared out of my brain. Oh no, sorry, I've got it. Okay, we're back. My wellbeing win is the fact of when your Pilates instructor suddenly knows your name or remembers your name.
You feel so special.
I know. Isn't it just such a good feeling? I think that I hold my Pilates instructors as these like very cool, wonderful people in my mind.
Yes.
Like they just seem so fabulous and amazing. And then the other day, one's like, "Good work, Lauren," as I was doing, my Pilates class. And I thought, oh my God,
That's me.
This is the most amazing moment. That's my wellbeing win. My wellbeing wobble is that I have the worst sense of direction known to man, I believe. It's just so bad. So I today was taking maps home and it got me to get off the freeway to get straight back on the freeway, which if I had a better sense of direction, I would have picked that up and not done that.
Yeah.
It was really silly. It added a whole bunch of minutes onto my trip and I literally just got off a freeway exit and straight back on afterwards.
That does sound like a maps problem, not just a Lauren problem.
Okay, but
like both you and maps are at fault.
That's really nice free framing of that from you, but definitely I have a problem with directions. Like if I go in a shopping centre and I walk in, like I've gone to like a bathroom or something, then I walk back out from where I came from, I can't work out which direction I came from. Like I have no idea if I came from the right or the left. I'm just lost, completely disoriented.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a skill you can work on. Geography. Maps.
Yeah. How about you, Kira?
My wellbeing win. I've had a great week. I had a beautiful weekend away with some girls and it was so much fun catching up with them. I felt we spent the whole time laughing and playing games and having fun. So that was definitely my wellbeing win. And then my wellbeing wobble has been I always don't check the weather / never bring an umbrella or rain jacket anywhere. So I think it's been a rainy week in Melbourne and I've probably been caught off guard maybe 3 or 4 times where I've just been walking somewhere or got to work and didn't pack waterproof clothing or anything appropriate.
Yeah, and it happened like once and then that did not help you.
Still haven't learned. No.
Did not help you remember to put the umbrella in the bag. So today we are answering questions, audience questions, like you said.
Very exciting.
We did an episode recently, our 20th episode, where we unpacked our careers to becoming psychologists and kind of the journey to where we are now. And after that episode on TikTok and Instagram, we got a bunch more questions about just psychology careers and all of the different bits and pieces to becoming a psychologist. So that's what we're unpacking unpacking today.
Yes. To kick us off, the first question is tips for honours and masters applications.
Yeah.
So for psychology students applying for an honours program or masters program, what are your hot tips?
There are lots of things that go into
Yeah.
honours and masters
So
applications.
much.
One of those things is your kind of resume and cover letter.
Yes.
And we've talked a bit about this, but often those documents, or, you know, you might make one and then use it for multiple different applications. It's a really good idea to kind of personalize them for the type of thing you're going
Yes.
for, because the different programs will be really unique, or they'll have kind of unique things they're looking for. And it's good to tailor your application. I mean, both your resume, but your broader application to those.
Yes. So many universities ask you to write a letter. Maybe that's a cover letter or a slightly different type of letter about why you're interested in that program, and definitely make it program and university specific. Another hot tip is, as someone who kind of works at a university and who reads a lot of essays and assignments submitted to university academics, or the people reading your cover letters, will be so quick to decipher if something is written by ChatGPT or a person. So definitely don't rely on AI to write these cover letters or resume. Sit down and really have a think about why you want to apply for this uni. Write it, or I was about to say type it by hand. You don't have to write it by hand, but type it out, like spend some time thinking about it and make it really personalized to you, not an AI robot.
And you can think about each sentence or thing that you've got in your application. So whether that's in a cover letter, whether that's in the resume, every word or every section is bits of valuable information. So it's thinking about, what is this sentence, or what is this point, what is this statement adding, and why does the panel, why does the board, why does whoever's reading this care about this little bit of information? So like everything you include should be meaningful, important information, and read through those sentences and think, okay, what's this adding? And if it's not adding anything, or if it's, you know, information that doesn't quite yet sound like it's, you know, something valuable for the person that's reading it, then change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing we should probably note is that these degrees are super competitive.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to get into a master's or honours program, and they rely on things like your grade, your work or volunteer experience, life experience, desire to do these programs. So just know that it can be a really difficult process. Don't be too disheartened if you don't get in on first attempts. It's really common for people to take a year or two off after undergrad or after honours to gain some more work experience. Obviously, grades are really important, but sometimes it's almost like when you're applying for these degrees, your grade average is your grade average and you can't really change it. You can't change it. But if you're listening to this and maybe you're earlier on in the university degree, please note that as someone who works as a teaching associate at uni, I love it when my students ask me questions, or if they email me questions about assignments, or ask to stay back after a tutorial to chat through some queries they had about an assignment. Do the most you can to boost your grades whilst you can.
Yeah. I feel the same about when I've had students in the past as well. And not every, you know, tutor or every experience is going to be like that.
Yeah.
But it is really good to make the most of, you know, each assignment, because it does add up to form that grade, which is then, like you said, really important for honours and masters applications. In saying that, the experience and the networking and other connections also, from our perception, you know, we're not involved in kind of the people that make the decisions for these courses.
No.
We're not involved at that level. But just in terms of our own personal reflection on the journey to apply and get in and go through this process, experience does, like, you know, account for quite a bit of the of your applications and of the things that you can talk to in interviews, and like the way that you can present your like qualities. You can do a lot of that by talking about your experience and the things that you've done, which is, great if grades is something where, it didn't go as well as you had planned or you didn't get the grade you expected. Well, you can take that time to build up experience and those other
Yeah.
things that shape out your application as well.
Yes. So we're speaking a lot about experience, which leads really nicely into our next question, which is, where do we gain this work experience or volunteering experience? How did you go about that, Lauren?
I started looking at experience with kind of volunteering things pretty early in my undergrad degree. And this was probably something that was really helpful throughout my training and then helped a lot later in applications. So when I was applying for programs or when I was going through, I was really happy that I had done those things earlier.
Yes.
So for example, I volunteered in kind of a hospital setting, and I just sought out, I think I just looked up or had heard through other people about different volunteering opportunities that there were within the area that I was interested in, and then sought out and applied for some of those things.
Yeah.
But through the rest of my degree, I just took on or took up the opportunities that were offered by the uni. So in the setting I was in, there were these research internships that happened during the undergrad program. So you would, get allocated to a lab group, and then you would go and kind of work and do volunteer experience in that lab, getting research experience.
That sounds so cool. I don't
Yeah.
think that was offered at my uni.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool to know.
Yeah, it's really helpful for research groups to get
Yep.
work done. But in saying that, and at the time when I was applying for it, I think I wasn't so interested in the research part yet. I was really interested in the clinical work of being a psychologist, but I still took up the opportunity when it came up because I thought this is a way to get a bit more experience and also to kind of network within the people that are in my uni, the different lab groups and the different people that I might work with in honours, for example. And so I still got involved in it, and that actually kind of grew my interest in research. So when those opportunities come up, it's great to kind of jump on board with them. If you've got capacity and you can, that's a really great thing to do, and it'll often pay off more than you expected later.
Definitely. So saying yes to those experiences that come up throughout uni.
Yeah. How about you with research and volunteer and other experience?
Yeah, mine was a little bit different. I was interested to hear that you kind of was thinking about getting work experience from the get-go. My first 1 or 2 years of uni, I worked in hospitality. I would host kids' birthday parties, and I really didn't have any psychology-related work experience. Then probably in my third year, as you're kind of thinking about honours applications, I started to gather some experience, and I was involved in a university committee, and that was related to psychology. Then I also gained a little bit of work experience in a research survey role. Having said that, it wasn't academic research, it was more market research. And then I then applied for a volunteer role at a hospital across an oncology and mental health ward. And this was a children's hospital. And that was so helpful to get experience. And I think I was able to get that role probably from my hospo job and from hosting kids' birthday parties, because I had experience working with children. And then following on from that, I then did some volunteering at a school summer camp with teenagers. And through training for that, I got my mental health first aid and got experience working with young people with mental health challenges. So it kind of slowly built up over time just through random work experiences. I had my first ever job, and then that kind of worked as a stepping stone towards more psychology related work experience.
Yeah. What you've described there is that once you take on one thing or become involved in one thing, what often happens is that there is a snowballing of kind of experience and opportunities and things that come out of that. And it's helpful then to kind of take on or jump into something and be looking for the other things that will come up, because it often does snowball onto things that then become more and more related to what you're interested in.
100%. And another really great thing about gaining all this work experience as you're pursuing your psychology studies is it really helps you work out kind of where you want to take your psychology career, such as what masters you want to pursue or what area of research you're interested in or future job opportunities. For example, I know from some of my volunteering experience or work experience, I learned, okay, I really like working with young people. I want to work clinically with young people. And other opportunities I had, I kind of like, oh, okay, this is maybe less interesting for me, or maybe it's not for me. But without having had that experience, I wouldn't have known what I liked and what I didn't like.
Yeah. It's also common for people, I think I see this with students that I have too, in that you're going through the psychology program and maybe you haven't thought about getting extra experience yet.
Yeah.
And then it's getting to the third year or it's in honours. If, people find themselves in that situation where they have even finished honours and you might think, oh, I don't have any relevant experience. Even the things that maybe don't feel relevant can still be super relevant in an application. So working in a supermarket, working like any type of work, you can speak to the soft skills, so interpersonal skills, the problem solving, all of the different things that you have built up from those jobs, and use that in an application. So it's absolutely not the end of the world if that experience is not, specifically related to psychology or working in kind of the mental health space. You can also speak to the skills that you've built in jobs that can feel really unrelated to the field. And in the same way, like you were saying earlier, if you get to this point where you're towards the end of the degree and you're thinking about applications and they are really competitive processes, it's okay to have a year, have 2 years where you are gaining that experience. You're also getting the opportunity to maybe save some money and and work, and can build on all of those skills, get experience that feels, more relevant to the field of work and psychology, and then use that to help shape your application and apply again. That's really common.
Super common. Other experiences that are quite common for psychology students to pursue are getting involved in helplines or hotlines and volunteering. I know Beyond Blue is really well known and popular, but there's also lesser known helplines that you can volunteer at or get part-time jobs at. So maybe it's worth Googling mental health support lines in your state or your city and see what opportunities are available. I also know lots of people take on research assistant roles.
Yeah, that's probably more common in like once you're in a degree later on. So kind of work or work experience when you're in a PhD or you're in your master's and you're working in a research space. Those opportunities often come up, but that's something that a lot of people also do when they're in those years between having finished honours and then applying for a postgrad master's or PhD program, is they might work as a research assistant within that time, which is a really great way to gain experience to build out a resume. One of the things that I have found really helpful, both in that lead up to applications and just within broader kind of career and job opportunities, is just always thinking about building connections with the people in your industry and in your area. So taking up those opportunities, even when you're in undergrad or you're in honours or you're in a master's program, to network and connect with, the people that teach you, the researchers that are within your group, going to the events and the things that are offered. A lot of those have just really great opportunities to meet even the people that will be running the master's programs, that run the honours course. And just being able to build up that network, it goes a long way to show that you are like an active and engaged person also in the program and in the uni. If you're, going to the networking events, or you're going to the seminars that are put on, or you're actively engaging in the programs, that I think that goes a long way, just to show that you're really committed as well.
Yeah, it shows that you're keen. I think another hot tip for students studying psychology, if you're wanting to get some experience, is to jump on LinkedIn and have a look at psychologists who might be a few years older than you or early on in their careers, and scroll back to see what was their work experience throughout their degrees and how did they get to where they are now, if that's something similar to what you want to do. Another great thing about LinkedIn is that there's constantly job opportunities popping up, and it's even just great to increase your awareness of the different mental health organizations that are out there that have roles available. And maybe it's not a role that you take now, but maybe you think, oh, maybe in a year or two I could volunteer there, or I could work there, or it's just really great to see kind of what else is out there, because we only know what we know.
Yes, absolutely. Did you have any research experience, Kira? This is another question. Did you have any research experience or publications before your honours and masters?
No, not at all. So I spoke briefly to, I worked doing research surveys for a company, but that was more market research rather than academic research. So I had very limited research experience and no publications.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
I did that research internship when I was in my third year undergrad.
Okay, what's this research internship?
So that was when I, got involved in a lab, and
yes.
and you can help with all types of different things. So I think for me, I helped with some of the data collection on a project and got some good experience there, which was really helpful. But I didn't have any publications prior to starting the PhD either. I did my honours program, and then when I applied for the PhD, I didn't have any publication. So no, you can definitely get into masters and PhDs with no publication.
Yes, don't stress.
Yeah. How did you balance the cost of living while studying? This is a really good question because it's very hard.
Yes, Cosy Lives, it is difficult to balance the cost.
What did you say then?
Cosy Lives.
Cosy Lives.
Yes, life's expensive.
Yeah, I haven't heard Cosy Lives.
Oh.
Cost of living.
Yeah.
Am I really old? Okay, tell me about how you balance the cost of living while studying, Kira.
It can be difficult, and it's something that you do have to be really mindful about. When you're doing a master's program, there's only a limited number of hours that you can work part-time. And so for me, it was really considering, what job do I do, or what am I doing in those part-time hours where I am able to earn enough money to get by.
Yeah.
And for me, it meant being quite selective in taking on a role that paid quite good per hour, given I was only able to work like 8 hours in a week. Like, that's not much.
Yeah.
And another thing to consider, which is not only the case for psychology, but so many healthcare professionals, when you do placement, that's often unpaid placement, which can be really difficult because you're waking up, going to work for 8 hours, but I say going for work in quotation marks because you're not being paid for those hours.
Yeah.
So it is a huge financial consideration, and one to be considered.
Yeah. And it honestly makes degrees like these and pursuing careers like psychology inaccessible for a lot of people, because both the costs of the programs as well as managing the balance between being committed to a lot of training and days of, doing your degree, also then going to placement and not having it compensated, it does make the programs inaccessible, which is a systemic problem.
Yes.
Like there's not much talking around it. It is really tricky.
But fingers crossed, placements can one day be paid. Like, that would be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The programs like PhDs as well, those are often covered by the government. So
if you're a domestic student,
yes,
often there's no
additional like HECS
for doing a PhD, which I think surprises a lot of people. I am often asked, oh, you must have a massive heck step due to your PhD. And then I always reply being like, I didn't pay to do my PhD. In fact, it's quite common for PhD students to get a stipend or what is a little scholarship.
Yeah.
So that kind of pays you a wage, would you say, or a salary?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
like a
small-
regular, I mean, I guess it kind of fits within that. It's a scholarship, but
Yeah.
it's you get it paid in increments. I mean, we're generally just talking from our experience, not from
Yeah.
like the broader, field, but you get supplemented by this scholarship because it's such a huge time commitment
Yes.
and you can't work. Again, it's a small amount of,
Yes.
of money, but that does help to, that helps to make
Your
it feasible to
day
do
to
to do a
day.
PhD. And because you are then doing research, you're furthering the area of research, you're generating
Yeah.
publications. Generally, all of those things are kind of benefits for the system. And
Yes.
so then they award scholarships to help with that, which does help with making the cost of living and the balance of the work and things a bit easier when you do have those stipends.
Exactly. So our next question is, how do you switch off from being a psychologist whilst you're doing your university placements and beyond?
It is something that probably comes with time more. Do you feel like
Yes.
this was maybe harder when you're really just starting?
Yes.
And you're doing your first placement and you're seeing your first set of clients, and it can be very all consuming, which is something that people should absolutely, if they're in the state of being on placement or early in their careers, be talking to their supervisors about
Yeah.
to kind of unpack and help with that. But yeah, it can be harder at the beginning because everything is fresh, everything is new, everything is much more stressful. And so you're thinking about it far more often. Whereas over time, as you get into the practice and you develop more of your psychology skills and everything becomes a bit more comfortable, then it's easier to kind of switch off or separate that home and other
Work.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
What are some of the self-care or practical tips that you have used, Kira, to manage kind of placement work study, just that was and kind of is the whole, crazy ride of
Becoming a psychologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is such an important question. And my answer has changed over time. I think when I first started my master's placement, I was still figuring out what my self-care practices were. And I didn't quite know how to best support myself after a tough day of work or placement.
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, supervision is such a great place to begin. Your supervisors are there to support you. Don't be a hero. Don't pretend that you're fine.
Yeah.
If you're feeling stressed out or overworked or overwhelmed, speak up and flag things with your supervisors. They're there to help support you and train you.
And it's really important that we do that so that we're looking after ourselves, so that,
Yes.
we can best look after others. It's absolutely so important
important.
to have those conversations.
Yeah.
One of the things that has been really helpful or a key along, especially the training part of my journey, is just checking in with my peers,
Yes.
because there are so many experiences that you might think that you are going through and it's unique to you, but then you realize that everyone else is thinking and
Yes.
feeling the exact same thing, and you're like, oh, okay, it's not
Mm.
just me. Everyone is having a hard time.
Yes, definitely. The friends you make at uni are so great to kind of go to and bounce off your experiences and, share, I'm feeling this way. Is anyone else feeling this? And 9 times out of 10, you'll all be feeling that
Yeah.
when you're on placement and kind of navigating study and
Yeah.
work experience and
All of the things.
all of the things.
Yeah.
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 And also just, maintaining your own self-care practices. So
Yeah.
for me, that looks like getting enough exercise, sleep, eating well, speaking to friends and family members if I am feeling really overwhelmed.
Yeah. In this time, especially if you're in the stage where you are on placement, you're also doing clinical training in the same week, and you're working, so you've got like all of the things happening at once at one time,
Yes.
which is often the case within these programs. There'll be times where
Yep.
you're on placement, you're working and you're studying.
And there's an assignment due next week.
And there's an assignment due.
Yep.
One of the things that I probably had a tricky time doing during my training, but on reflection think would have been really good, was properly scheduling out time that
Yep.
was just downtime or
Mm.
social time, or this pocket of time where it was, I'm not focusing on any of those things, I'm having this break, and it's guilt-free time to
Yeah.
do that. And I'm laughing because I could take my own advice today for this too. But that's really important, because it will get to a point where there's just so much to do,
Mm.
and it can feel like you can't take any time away from that. You can't just step back at all, because there's just so much to focus on. But it's really important then to block out some time so that when you go back to the study or you go back to the work, that you
Yeah.
can actually engage in it properly.
Yeah, you're feeling fresh.
Yes. And sorry, one more thing on the managing the whole lot of those things all together during the training is that it can be really helpful to try and separate things as best as you can. So
What do you mean by that?
So, for example, in our programs, we're doing, PhD, and we're doing coursework and clinical training, and we're doing placement. And it was really helpful to kind of block out the time where, okay, this is PhD time. Like, this is when I'm focusing on my
Mhm.
research. I'm not
Multitasking.
going to jump into the assignment. I'm not
Yeah.
going to jump into the coursework. I'm not going to jump into placement admin. I'm going to focus on the research at this time. So like blocking out that time and keeping it
Mhm.
specific for the thing. Or if you're in masters, it might be, okay, this is my thesis time. I'm focusing on my thesis today, this, whether it's the whole day, whether it's this half of the day, and then
Mm.
the rest of the time I'm switching into coursework mode. But when you have this constant like back and forth between your brain of all the different tasks you're working on, it can be really hard to like get into the state where you can do that stuff effectively.
Yeah.
Which I reckon we talked about in our focus episode or something. Go back and have a little listen.
This next question is PhD specific. The listener asked, what are some overseas travel opportunities related to doing a PhD?
In my PhD, I got to go overseas to present at a conference.
Yep.
That comes up pretty often
Yes.
in PhDs, where there's all different types of research conferences all over the world for your area of
Yeah.
specialty, and so like your research specialty, and so you can go to those. And often when you're in a PhD, I mean, it really depends on the uni. Only speaking from our experience, there are sometimes like funds or scholarships to help you
Yeah.
go overseas and present your work.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful
Yeah.
way.
An amazing opportunity.
Did you have any overseas PhD time?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I was overseas for part of my PhD. And
Yeah.
again, there was a program, the university I was at is affiliated with universities overseas.
Yeah.
And they do like partnerships where it's really easy to go and study abroad for a
Yeah.
little bit, or go and do a week or two workshop or intensive. And when I say intensive, it's not like a subject intensive, but like a conference intensive type
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Another important thing that maybe important's not the right word. Another cool thing
Yeah.
about doing a PhD is that it is super independent.
Yeah.
So depending on your topic, you can determine whether you're in person at university completing your PhD, or if you're doing it remote from home or from a cafe, or what time of day you start working on your thesis and what time of day you finish your thesis.
Yeah.
So and in the same breath, what time of year you choose to take holidays and you choose to take leave.
Yeah.
It is really self-directed, which is really cool if you decide to pursue a PhD pathway and do
Yeah.
research. There is lots of like flexibility in terms of what you make your PhD journey look like.
Yeah.
And if you go overseas for conferences or go into state, or, work in a lab and meet people at uni, or, so many opportunities.
Yeah. It is very different depending on what type of work you do.
Yes.
So some I am thinking back to the period of my PhD where we were doing all this in-person data collection in a hospital. Like, you're very actively there, kind of on the ground every day, and it can look a bit more like a job. And for other, you know, more
When-
sciencey, I'm thinking of people in labs doing stuff where, or in my uni, they were growing cells down the hallway, so
Oh,
they had to be
wow.
there like all the time, keeping them
Yes.
alive.
Yes.
Couldn't be me, but but
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
can't keep a plant alive, let alone a little petri dish of cells. But yes, it does depend on
Your topic.
the topic and the type of research you're doing.
Yeah.
However, it is still probably often the case that that flexibility is a great part of a PhD. Absolutely. If you struggle with time management, it can also become a con sometimes because you do have a lot of freedom, and so some days it can be like, oh wow, it is 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Where has the day gone? But generally it is really good.
Yeah. Our next question is advice for applying for jobs once getting general registration. So once you've finished your placement and your master's degree, you're then eligible to apply for your general psychology registration. What was your experience regarding applying for jobs?
I did this in advance of
Yeah.
finishing. So I guess thought about the types of work I wanted to do after the end of my program. I had, I guess, built kind of connections and stayed in touch with different people across the training program, and then reached out to them, and scoped what my options would be before I'd finished the training program, and then followed those leads. And that often comes from things like your placements. If you've done a placement, you really enjoyed the setting, you really enjoyed your supervisor, you had a good experience, and that's an area you want to work in. Sometimes opportunities for ongoing work can come kind of off the back of those experiences.
Which was the case for me. I'm so glad you said that. One of my placements throughout my master's degree rolled into my first paid role. And it was a no-brainer for me to take that opportunity because I knew I liked the workplace. I'd already been there for months working as a provisional psychologist and felt really well supported by my supervisor and by the team. I knew I liked the organization and the environment. So I was really happy to keep working there as a employee and have finished my placement. So yeah, it definitely does happen that placements might help guide or might lead to work experience, but also I know of other peers who they had a placement opportunity, and although it may have been an opportunity for lots of like learning and development, they decided this isn't a workplace, or it isn't an area I want to kind of like further my career in. I want to shift to a different organization or shift to a different line of work.
Yeah, and get different experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And those types of other job opportunities are often coming up. Like I feel like I see psychology jobs pop up all the time.
Yeah.
It'll be different for every kind of area of psychology that people are in, and depending on their university system, like some universities and training programs kind of help build those relationships so that you're really ready to jump into a role. It'll be different for everyone, but there are a lot of things out there. I guess from our experience, something that's coming through that is helpful is thinking about that before the end of a training program can be helpful. So thinking about what opportunities might there be, who can I reach out to, or what connections can I build so that I can, like, there are things that I'm ready to step into when I'm done.
Yes. And job platforms like Seek and LinkedIn can also be great places to look for jobs there. I constantly see opportunities going for early career psychologists who might have just graduated from uni. So definitely check them out if you're interested in seeing different opportunities for work.
Yeah. And even the people like within your training program. So, the people that run the training programs, and there's often like practices or hospitals or other places getting in touch with, the people that run psychology training programs, being like, we're looking for registrars in this area. We're looking
Yeah.
for early career psychologists. We're looking for someone to fill these roles.
Yeah.
And so you can always, I feel like it's an underrated thing, or it's an underutilized thing, I should say, of just telling people around you and telling
Yes.
those people that have taught you and your mentors, okay, I'm now ready for a job. This is the type of job I'm looking for. This is what I'm really hoping for in a role. Can you let me know if you see anything? Can you put the word out? Like
Yeah.
can go so far.
Yeah. Being very proactive. I love that.
Yeah. Proactive for the win.
Next question is, what are some pros and cons of different workplace settings? And we know psychologists work across different workplace settings like private practice, hospitals, schools, organizations.
Yeah.
Obviously, we
All
can't,
over.
we can't speak to pros and cons of every single one, but any workplace has the positives and has some downsides as
Yeah.
well.
It's really personal for the type of work you want to do as to whether something that is a pro for one person might be a con for you. And
Yes.
that's probably something I've noticed in terms of like across the training program with my peers. There are things that I love or am really interested in terms of my clinical career that my other colleagues are absolutely not looking for. I mean, the most common one is like, do you work in pediatrics or do you work in an adult setting? Like that's a really common divider, I feel, for some. I don't know. Well, it wouldn't have been the case in your
Because
program.
I wanted to work with young people
but also like educational and developmental psychology.
Yes.
If you're in that training program, you want to work with young people.
Yes.
In neuropsychology, it's across the lifespan, and a lot of neuropsychology roles are in adult settings.
Yeah.
And so I think for our program, that was something where it's like, whether you want your clinical job to be with young people or with adults.
Yep.
But the purpose of me going on that spiel is to say that the pros and cons of a particular setting, like public practice, public settings, private
like a
practice,
public hospital versus private
hospital acute work versus long-term, therapy work in another setting. Like the preferences of that, or the pros and cons, they just completely, I think, depend
differ
on
by
your
person.
on your individual interests. So
Yeah.
that is not very specific, but that's probably all we can say.
I also think across the setting,
Yeah.
looking for good support, good supervision, good learning and growth opportunities,
Yeah.
and professional development, they're super important regardless of your setting.
Yeah. Variety in what you're doing as well to help build those skills, especially in early career.
Yeah.
All of those things. Okay. Another question. Can you go and work overseas as a psychologist if you've done your training in Australia? Do we know anything about this?
Great question. And this is something I'm interested to learn more about.
Yeah.
Both you and I have never worked overseas as psychologists.
Yeah.
And it can be pretty confusing, the process, because every country has different training programs. So when you take your Australian psychology qualification overseas, sometimes you need to prove that academic education, or possibly do like a bridging pathway or a bridging course to have your Australian qualification recognized overseas.
Yeah.
Other countries, it might be a little bit easier. But I do know of people who have trained to become a psychologist in Australia, then they've worked overseas, but as a researcher rather than holding the title of psychologist.
Yeah. And I guess because there is a lot of paperwork and processes and different things.
Yes.
Because in Australia, we're then licensed with Australian bodies as a psychologist. So we have, a license in Australia, and that lets us practice here as a psychologist. And so the same thing, other countries have licensing bodies which give you, your license to practice as a psychologist in the UK, for example, or in New Zealand or in America. And so you can't just be a licensed psychologist in Australia and turn up in
Yes.
the UK and say, I'm now a psychologist here. Like, you need to be licensed there. And so there are like particular pathways in every
Yeah.
country to get that licensing. And even, for the United States, it's different for every state. And then if you move between states, it's different for all of them
Yes.
too. So yes, a long pathway. And I guess similarly with people who have done their training or are even registered from other countries coming to Australia to work as a psychologist, a similar situation where, it has to be approved and then you need a license granted by the psychology board in
Yeah.
Australia. And so it kind of goes both ways.
Yes, unfortunately, it's
Yes.
not that simple.
Yeah, I'd like to do a little overseas staycay as a psychologist. Maybe like this might help London version, UK.
That would be fun.
Okay, that was the end of all of our lovely audience questions. Thanks everyone for your questions.
For sending them in.
To wrap us up, Kira, do you have some key takeaway of advice that you would give if someone's in the midst of their psychology training journey? They're in the middle of it.
I would have 2 key pieces of advice.
Love that.
1, connect and make friends with other people who are undertaking similar journeys. So if you're studying psychology at uni, make friends with other people in your tutorials and you can connect and bond with them over those shared experiences of assignments and then in the later years, placements and different work opportunities.
Yeah.
And my second piece of advice is to say yes to things and get experience, even if it's getting experience to narrow down what you don't want to do. That's still a really valuable learning and something that will help build your skills over time. So say yes to the different opportunities that come your way. And throughout university degrees, there's so many amazing opportunities that do, whether that's like social clubs or different like workshop opportunities.
Being on committees.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you? Sorry.
I was just waiting to see if Kira was going to forget to ask me.
Episode's wrapped up. Sorry, that was so rude
I've
of
just
me.
shared 2 such beautiful key insights,
We
which
can
they
call
were.
it
They
there.
were. Yeah. We don't need your input, no.
Tell me though.
They were 2 beautiful pieces of advice that I would absolutely echo back as well. One thing to add is to connect with the people that are training you throughout your program. So to, take interest in the research that they do or the work they do, to like check in regularly with them across your training journey, like just kind of keep those connections going. It is maybe more so the case earlier in degrees, so like the undergrad stage and earlier on, but it became really apparent to me later, kind of in the honours and then in the PhD program, that the people that had been lecturing or teaching me were like world leaders in their fields, like
Wow.
experts in all of our training programs. They're like experts in whatever area of research they're in, or they've, amazing, really successful psychologists. Like that's the case for a lot of university training programs because it's really hard to get their position too that they're in. And so it's just a wealth of opportunity of learning from them. And I think it's really good to actually engage and kind of keep in touch with the people that are training you. Another thing is just to look after yourself as well.
Yeah.
It's such a long program. There are many times within it. Yeah, there's many hurdles. And there's so many times throughout the training that it can feel very like disheartening. There are a lot of kind of pivot points where, if it's from undergrad to honours or if it's from those honours applications into postgrad and there's many different pockets of time where it can be really, really challenging and you're not sure what the future is going to look like for the career for you. So just look after yourself as well and keep that little circle of support as strong as you can. And that's all from me.
Thank you for those beautiful words of encouragement, Lauren. It's so true. that brings us to the end of today's episode, all about our listener questions. Thank you so much for sending them through. We are on Instagram and TikTok. So if you've met us recently on TikTok, come over and join our Instagram community. We're
Yes.
thrilled to have you.
Yeah, we're
And-
at This Might Help Podcast. That's where you'll find us. And
Probably
also,
should say that,
yeah. And also the video versions on YouTube, as always.
Yes, Lauren and I are two independent podcasters who have just started this little community. So if you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to support us by sending it to a friend or someone who you think would benefit from the episode and hearing about all things psychology.
Yes, if you need any further help as well, there are always extra supports and helplines in the show notes too. And we will see you next week for another episode.
Catch you then.
Bye.
Bye.